Hey guys, Ava here, and today we're going to be doing a 22XE Bobwood cam install. We were supposed to get some help from Thor, but for some reason he didn't call in today. I don't think we got a hold of him. So we're just gonna,
Now that we've got Thor up, let's see if we can't get this going. So today we're going to try to install a WM8-22XE Bobwood cam in this bone stock 2020 Road Glide and show you guys the result of the cam and how to install it. That way if you want to do it at home, you can do it yourself. We're going to include the parts, the torque specs and everything to do this at your house. So Thor is going to show us what parts that we're going to start putting in it today.
First, we've got our 22XE cam. We've got a nice set of S&S tappet cuffs to go in it.
Now I know, Thor, that a lot of controversy is on these tappet cuffs. Everybody that calls the shop on this cam install asked if they need these tappet cuffs. Now, personally, on a drop-in cam, we have never seen a plastic tappet cuff that come in these Harleys fail, have we?
I've never seen one break. I think now it's getting to the part, this is a 2020, it's not as big of a deal. These bikes now are getting 5 years old, 17 model M8s. The plastic parts, are they getting weaker as they get older? I'm not really sure, still haven't seen them break, but you're already there, already at it. It's extra insurance for the price, just to be safe. Yeah.
Go ahead and get those in there, for sure. And like you're saying, in the future, we don't know what's going to happen, just get it fixed.
Yeah.
And it's really cheap too, that's the thing. What are we looking at here? $44.95 for a set of them. So, what else we got?
Install kit, that's just going to come with our O-rings we need for the cam plate and oil pump, cam cover gasket, and our inner cam bearing. You're always going to want to change that inner cam bearing. The factory is junk. That's what I've seen take out M8 motors for the biggest part. Inner cam bearing comes apart and wrecks your whole motor, sends debris all through the whole motor. That's the biggest thing you can do. Nice pretty set of black tappet covers. Everybody wants to make them look good. Also, nice set of black push rod covers, S&S Quickie push rods. Makes the job easy and they're good quality. Everybody, we had a call this week about some guy didn't want to put adjustable push rods in his bike, but I've never had a single problem out of these S&S adjustables.
We got the Wood lifters, just great lifters, never causes us any trouble. And Wood, he backs his stuff up with a lifetime warranty, so very good product. Happy with those. I'm going to give a quick rundown. Going to try to make this video fast, so me and Thor's going to rip this thing apart real quick. So we're going to pull these saddlebags off, pull the back mufflers off. You got 1/2 inch bolts on the back, 5/8 bolt on the muffler clamp on this side, 9/16 on the muffler clamp on the other side, then 1/2 inch holding the pipe to the heads. Thor, what is our Allen bolts for the
Floorboard is a 5/16 Allen.
Okay, we'll get the floorboards off, and then we'll get down to business.
For some guys, it might not hurt to have a can of PB Blast or two or something similar. Once those pipes get rusted up, they're going to get harder to get off of there.
Yeah, for sure. We don't want to scratch them up. The customer may want his old pipes back. Let's jerk the heat shields off so that we can get to the 1/2 inch bolts that hold the head pipe to the head. Also, there is a motor mount down here that holds the head pipe on that we'll also need to get off with a 1/2 inch bolt. Thor won't let me use his fancy power tools. I'll have to use hand tools. Also, we're going to have to remove the O2 sensors that's in the exhaust. The plug to them is under this right side cover, so they'll have to be unplugged. We'll cut the zip ties loose that's holding it. The wires are run under. We'll just leave those in the exhaust for right now and just get the exhaust off and get it out of the way. But we will put those in the D&D exhaust that we're fixing to reinstall. You guys seen the torque curve that a 22XE paired up with a D&D exhaust has? It's a tabletop. That's why we use it. It's just awesome.
You're going to want to get your bike jacked up in 6th gear. Roll that back wheel around and pull both of these push rods, and that goes for both cylinders. You can start with the front or back, whatever. But both of these push rods need to be all the way down. When you cut them, all the pressure off of them. All right. We can take a rag, just in case any debris comes off of that. It's not going to go down here. We're going to have these off anyway, but anything you can keep from getting in the motor, the better off you are. And guys, if you're not changing, like in this case, we're changing these tappet covers down here. You just be careful when you put this up there. I've seen guys scratch up pushrod tubes, fins, tappet covers, just because they're getting in there. It's kind of in an awkward spot, but you can scratch your stuff up pretty easy. We're going to pull off our cam cover and pull these tappet covers off and go from there. We're going to leave that top one a little bit loose, and we might have to hit this cover just to get it loose. Pulling these tappet covers off, it's going to be hard to get in there on them straight, and you're going to have a ball end Allen just about to get it. There's probably another way to get it, but I always use a ball end on it and get them out with that. We're going to pull these tappet covers off now that we've got our bolts out.
Okay, look guys, we're seeing on the internet constantly where people are breaking this bolt trying to get it off. It's the bolt that holds the tappet cuffs down. We're going to go with the S&S tappet cuff, so we need to remove it. But I don't know how many bikes they brought into here where they've actually broke it off and need us to get it out. If they're not wanting to come loose, always check them, see if they'll come loose. That one right there is feeling pretty tight. Pretty tight too. Before you break them, just get a soldering iron. This is just a snap-on soldering iron, and we've ground the tip of it flat. That way it will put the heat through to the bolt better. But if you'll just hold it on there, you can heat these bolts up, melt the Loctite, and they'll come out a whole lot easier.
Alright, we've got our tappet cuffs off. We had to heat those up and get them out of there. And now we're going to pull our lifters out. We're getting new lifters. I'm going to set these out to the side, inspect them. Already a little bit of frosting on the rollers of this. See how this one looks. Same thing. Alright, so we're going to start now pulling this cam plate and oil pump out. We got to take off this tensioner. These are T27s on here. And then this is going to be a 9/16 bolt and a 1/2 inch bolt. We're going to move over and grab my impact, pull these bolts out real quick. We're going to change the battery in my impact. We're going to pull these 2 bolts out, get our cam chain off. We're going to take a 3/16 and get all of these cam plate and oil pump bolts out. Set our cam plate to the side. And we're gonna pull this cam out, set it to the side, and pull this pump out and see if it's got the O-ring on the back. And we've got the latest updated pump, 2020 pump with the O-ring on the back. And now we can get to checking our run out and looking over cam plate and oil pump inspection and start getting on our way to get this put back together.
We're going to go ahead and pull the inner cam bearing out. Always change your inner cam bearing when you're putting the cams in. This is a nice inner cam bearing removal tool from Jim's. It speeds up everything. As you can see, bearings on the end of the tool. This is the bearing that was in it. You can see it's a bearing, a space in the cage, a bearing, space in the cage. Whereas the S&S bearing, it's all bearing, so it's a full roller. These are a whole lot better than the stock ones. A lot more bearings, just don't have trouble out of them. When you install it, there is an outer. Everybody seems to put these in backwards. The rolled part on it is going to go into the case first. You'll see that it's got writing on the outside. That's always the outside part of it. So this will be the way it goes in. We'll put some fresh oil on it and then press it into the case. We'll get ready to go ahead and install the new cam bearing. Make sure that it's nice and clean. Make sure that the install tool is nice and clean. Now we like this Maxima assembly lube to help it slide into the case without binding. Put a little bit on the outside of the bearing. And we'll use our Jim's install tool. Now this install tool is marked. The eyes are for install. That's how you'll know which bolts it goes in. Let's snug those up. And then just start pressing it in. Just go easy, make sure it's going nice, smooth, not binding. There you go, kind of got snug, that's good enough. Let's back it off. We can look up in there to make sure the bearing is set where it needs to be. You can stick your finger to the other side, make sure that it seems to be pretty centered in it, and should be good to go. Make sure your spark plugs are out, of course, so you can roll the bike over in 6th gear and you can see it moving. So I just always turn it over a few times and then pick one side or the other and zero it out on that side. So this one, 2.5 3/1000 run out. That'll work just fine. We see that most M8 bikes are pretty close around 3/1000. Wouldn't you say, Thor, for the most part?
3/1000 is the average number.
Yeah.
We're going to clean up our surfaces. Usually carburetor cleaner and a good clean rag will clean these up good. You can take a small scraper if it's got bigger stuff on it, piece of gasket on it. We're going to want to check, make sure our O-rings are out so we can put our new O-rings in. And just basically we're going to clean up our bolts, get all the old Loctite off, get them good, clean, dry, and everything ready to assemble. And we'll be seeing you when we're putting this all back together. Alright, we're going to lube up these O-rings with some assembly lube. Just that way nothing gets in a bind, you don't pinch an O-ring. Go ahead and take this cam assembly lube. There it goes into the bearing. Assembly lube on all of the lobes. Go ahead and set it in there for now. O-rings are lubed up, ready for the pump to go in. It's been oiled up, ready to go. And the flats on these gears are going to line up with the flat on the crank. So you might have to wiggle it around, turn your gears around, and then you'll feel it shove right through. Alright. I like to put a little bit more assembly lube just on the front of these gears, because that's a wear point to the back of the cam plate. If you've got dirt, grit, anything right there, it's going to wear out the cam plate. Alright, now we've got our cam plate put in. The bolts are just snugged down, they're not tight. And we're going to go through this and torque this down, torque this cam plate down, and then we're going to roll our back wheel around while we torque the oil pump bolts. That way our oil pump is centered up and we don't have any problems out of it. Alright. And for these 4 oil pump bolts, and if you look on your cam plate, it'll have numbers on it, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the order on them. And David's going to spin my back tire around for me, get this crank rotating around. And as that's going around, we'll go ahead and snug them up.
What's that torque spec on?
120 inch-pounds on cam plate and oil pump. And as you could see, while we were rotating that over, we're already pulling oil and making pressure back through this plate to our cam chain tensioner. Right here is where the oil feed hole is to it, and we're putting oil through the cam plate and through the end of the crank.
We already got it primed up and ready.
Oh yeah. The next step we're going to have is we got to check the cam spacing on it. It comes, normally this has a 120 cam spacer in it already. Most of the time they've got a 110 in them. And it's how we're going to do that. We'll go ahead and stick our factory spacer on and stick our cam gears on. It's got cam side and crank side, so when you're in line, might have to bump the back wheel, but that's going to hold our gears. That way the cam doesn't just spin when we try to tighten it. Alright, you're going to want to push your cam back, push the crank back, take a good flat edge that you know is true, and I usually try to push the flat edge against the crank first and rotate over, and you're going to want to look for a 10 thousandths gap, 10 thousandths or less you can get away with. Our 120 has us within spec, and it's just about on the money. A lot of times these will take a 130 cam spacer. I think nearly every one of them I do takes a 130 cam spacer. Alright, we've got red Loctite on our cam sprocket bolt and our crank sprocket bolt. We're going to run these in and then torque them down. Well, we're already on this one. The final torque is going to be 35 on the cam sprocket. Back it back down to 25 for the crank sprocket.
I mean, you just use the impact?
Nah, you're supposed to just impact them down to about 1,400 foot-pounds, aren't you? So we've got our timing marks lined up.
Show them the timing marks there, the 2 little dots.
The 2 dots right here. Gonna see if we can clean the oil out of these holes. Blue Loctite. That's on the T27s that holds our tensioner on.
What's the torque on those?
120 inch-pound. Nearly everything in the cam chest is going to be 120 inch-pound. Put them run down. We get our torque wrench out. We're going to take our new Woods lifters, just lube up the outside and lube up the rollers on them before we drop them in. With clean engine oil that we've got in our can, just roll them around. And another thing people ask us questions about a lot on the Woods lifters, they are directional. The Night Prowler logo on an M8, they will face each other. So this rear lifter, the Night Prowler logo will face forward. When we get it on the front, the Night Prowler will face towards the rear. Alright, we've got our lifters put in. So now we're going to take our S&S tappet cuffs, put them in. My bolts are already Loctited. They're marked front and rear. And drop the rear down. Have to get your lifters lined up. And another thing is, it's easier on these too if you turn it around enough to get both lifters up out of the hole a little. It just makes it a little bit easier to get a hold of them, turn them around. At this point your hands are already oily, so everything is a little bit harder to do. Go ahead and snug this bolt down. And when you put your feeler gauge in, you want to put it in the side that the pressure is going to be pushing against the lifter. So like tightening this up, when you spin it this way, it's going to tighten your tappet cuff over. So when we get ready to stick that in, we're going to stick it in front of this outside lifter. Just about there. Take our feeler gauge, get it stuck down in. And this feeler gauge don't even fit all the way in, but if you can get it in between, that's all you need. It is just in between. Grab our torque wrench. Gonna go up to 140 inch-pound on these.
So if you don't have the filler gauge in there and you tighten it up, then it's going to bind that lifter.
The next thing you're going to want to do after you do that is make sure your lifters go up and down smoothly. So this would for sure be one that would be stuck, but it goes up and down smooth. We might have to get a pick to get a hold of our other one. And they drop right back down. And we're going to just repeat that same process over to the front. Here when we come to the front to put this lifter cuff on, just like the rear, the side that's going to get torqued to whenever you tighten this bolt down, you want to put your feeler gauge in there. That way you're not getting in a bind. It's time to put our tappet covers on. They'll only go on one way and be right, so you might have to move it back and forth, but you'll just want all your holes to line up and the gasket surfaces to match on that. It's not that hard to figure out.
What's going to be the torque spec on them?
These are going to be 140 inch-pound as well. Alright, so we're getting ready to put our push rods back in here. And we're going to get the push rod O-rings out of the top. And as I see some leaks on these sometimes that get put together without cleaning those out. We'll go ahead and pull one of these.
When you guys are picking them out too, be careful and don't scratch
Yeah,
the
you
inside of that.
don't want to gouge that material. And this yellow glue like stuff, it'll stick up on the metal in there, and I think that's what causes a lot of the leaks that I see. And I'm going to take some carburetor cleaner before we go any farther, pull all these out, spray some carb cleaner on a rag, and wipe out all of these until there's no yellow left up in them. Push rod O-rings cleaned up, or got all the old glue like stuff out of here. So we're going to go over where they go in case you've never done this before. The big ones, the big thick O-rings are going to go up top where we just cleaned out. That'll be the ones that set right up here when you put your push rod in. The biggest ones that you're going to have, the biggest around, biggest diameter, are going to go in the bottom, right in your tappet covers. Right up on this tube right here. And then this will seal up against it. But we're going to get these lubed up, get this put together, and then go over installing the push rod. So when you put these new push rod tubes together, you're going to pull the old one apart and drop this spring out, because the new ones aren't going to come with that. You're going to pull the tube apart, drop this down, and you've got a flat washer on top here. You're going to get that all pulled apart and turn it the opposite way. Drop your spring down in this collar, that flat washer on top of the spring, right back together. Take an O-ring, lube it up, slide it down over the tube, and the flared out part seals your O-ring. The flat washer pushes against your O-ring, your spring is inside of the collar, and when your keeper comes up here, that's what keeps everything together and keeps it from leaking. Putting these O-rings in before we slide our push rod tubes up in.
Now, do you go ahead and put the O-rings on the top of the head, or do you stick them on the push rod?
I go ahead and push them up in the top. That's just the way I like to do them, the way I've always done it. The quickie push rods we're going to put in this, when you roll them out and adjust them out, you'll get down to the threads where your lock nut's going to go, and once they're adjusted up, you're going to put them together. Don't take a lot of torque to do it. You'll mess up your threads, crack one of the bolts, but it's what makes these nice when you take them back out later. If you change cam again, ever have to have your engine worked on, once you drop that down, the length of it, after you get past the threads, collapses in on itself. So that's what makes it really easy. We're going to lube these ends up. Grab a push rod tube. We've got our O-rings put in, O-ring put in on our tube. Collapse this push rod. Start with our timing marks on the rear cylinder. Timing marks are lined up. That means both lifters are all the way down. And just slide this up into where the rocker arm is in the top. And that might take you a second to slide in like that. And then a little bit of technique goes in this if you've never done it before, to keep from dropping the nut on there. But let your push rod drop down. Twist this up and get the slack out of it before your adjustment. You just don't want any up and down slack first, and we'll show you what we're meaning by that after we get it run up. Alright, we'll back it back down a little to show you guys. Alright, our push rod can move up and down right there. It settles down on the lifter and up against the rocker arm. So we're just going to adjust this right till we first run in to any resistance. Right there, we've lost all of our up and down movement. That means we're ready to set the preload on this lifter. And we'll do that by adjusting this 4 turns. Just like when we took it apart and we used this to hold up the push rod tube.
What is that, a snap-on paper clip?
Yeah, it's snap-on. It's pretty expensive, and I've nearly got this one paid off, and then I plan on buying a few more.
What was that, the 18-year program?
Yeah, 18 years at $49 a week.
Huh.
And this one's almost mine. But now you can see we've got that holding our tube up out of the way. We've got the slack took out of this. We can go ahead and run this lock nut up. And this is a 1/4 inch wrench to hold this bottom, and both of these nuts are 7/16. So we're going to take
gonna be hard to get in there to see this.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for you guys to see it, but we're going to want to hold that still and turn our push rod. And I'm counting flats. That's the way I like to do it instead of having to scribe it and make a mark on it and count it. And I'll go ahead and start adjusting on this, and you guys can see how it's done. And the nut up. Grab our other 7/16 wrench.
So every time you moved your wrench, you was basically, that was a flat.
Yeah, that was one flat. You'll count the side that faces you, this flat edge, and just that little bit of a turn is a flat. So say we're turned here, this is one flat, and that'd be two flats right there.
Some of the technique kind of putting the wrenches in your hand so you're not pulling on
Yeah.
the push rod. You can warp the push rod by pulling on it too tight.
So you'll want to get your bottom one on. Sometimes just getting it to the right spot to where you can actually get a grip on it can be a little bit challenging. But right there, we've got it to where we can tighten it. You take in one hand and push them together just like that and put the tension that you want on there.
Right. That don't push the push rod over trying to bend it.
And as far as, we're going to go ahead and knock these other ones out, and basically what you're waiting for before you put this push rod tube back together, which we'll be getting to, is you want to give this lifter time to bleed down to where you can spin it by hand with little resistance. If you can't turn it by hand, it's not ready to spin the motor over, and that's when guys will bend a valve. They'll have their push rod adjusted, but don't let the lifter bleed down. They spin it over to do the front and bang a valve right into the piston. So now we're going to roll this engine around, get the front piston on top dead center, which would mean both of our lifters are dropped all the way down. If you've already got your cam cover on and you can't see your timing marks, the best way to do it, you can feel both lifters right here, and it's going to be hard for you to see this and catch it in video, but you'll rotate this engine around, you'll feel the lifters start to drop down, and when they're both dropped all the way down, it'll be when your timing mark is back up to the top again. We're going to repeat the front, same steps as the rear. We've got our O-rings in. We're going to get our push rod up into the rocker. Drop that down and run our adjustment out. We'll get this knocked out, get our cam cover on, get the exhaust on, and we'll be closer to firing this up for you guys. Now we're going to put this cam cover back on. Get these bolts started. These are also going to torque to 120 inch-pound. Alright, so we're about to put this D&D top on. The first thing we're going to have to do is get these factory exhaust gaskets out. It helps to have a pick, just something similar to this. You don't want to gouge the aluminum on the head, but you want to get up under that and pull it out. It's not that big of a job. This is the new gasket that D&D pipes come with, and we're just going to slap these in and get this D&D pipe on.
Alright, so we'll put the D&D exhaust on. We're going to have to go ahead and pull this cover off to put the transmission bracket on for it. To get it up under there, we're going to remove these bolts also. So let's get it off. Torque those down.
And before we put this pipe on, we're going to take some anti-seize and hit these threads. That way next time the pipe comes off, the bolts aren't rusted up on there and end up breaking a stud off.
And guys, don't over tighten the pipe at the head. We usually will try to go back and re-tighten the bolts when it gets off the dyno because it's already been heat cycled a few times. But don't get carried away with tightening the bolts too much. After your first ride or so, go back and recheck them. The tighter you tighten it, you stand a chance of squishing your exhaust gasket off into the port, which will start losing horsepower. And be real careful putting these on. You don't want to scratch the guy's fins up or damage them or even break them. So we'll just work it into place. Go ahead and leave the bolts at the head loose, transmission bolt loose, and we'll slide the mufflers and everything on and get it set up and then tighten it all together. This bike is also getting a ghost pipe, so we'll have to install the ghost pipe as well, and then we'll be about ready. Next stop, dyno. Let's see what it's got.